Is this the best Game Master screen that has ever been created for a role-playing game? This is the Dungeon Master screen for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, and I remember when this came out, it was a kind of a big deal because I think it was such a great reference for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Now, if we're going to be talking about what is the best Game Master screen out there, or what makes a good Game Master screen, we do have to come up with what our yardstick or what our measuring stick is for what makes a good Game Master screen. What is it supposed to be doing? Well, the most obvious thing, which we actually don't have to talk about a lot, is that it's going to shield information from the players. It's designed to keep the Game Master's maps and notes secret from the players who are on the other side of the table. But really, every Game Master screen that I've ever got is able to do that. That's a characteristic of any kind of opaque object that is sitting between the players and the Game Master. So I don't really see a need to critique Game Master screens on that. But then Game Master screens also have the function, which I think is a secondary function, of providing some type of immersion to the players because they've got some kind of art on them. So that often happens as well. If you're trying to do a thematic game, you're trying to run something in a particular world, like Middle-earth or the Warhammer world or something like that, having a nice bit of art that goes on the table like that as a screen may help to add some bit of immersion into the world as well. But then the primary function of a Game Master screen, as far as I am concerned, is it needs to be able to facilitate gameplay. That's what needs to happen. It needs to actually make it easier to run the game, specifically by cutting down on the amount of times the Game Master has to go and reference all of the other books, or all the other players have to go and reference the book as well. So it should be bringing information to the Game Master and to the other players and basically putting it at their fingertips. And that is what this did right here. So this right here was not just a Dungeon Master screen, but also a Master Index. So that's one of the first things. That's the first thing that's inside. This is the Master Index, and this alone was an incredibly valuable play aid. This came out in 1995, and this is an index that crosses all these different books. Of course, by 1995, there were a lot of Dungeons & Dragons books that had been published, and so there were a lot to potentially reference during a game for any particular bit of information. And so, of course, as the number of books expand in any type of game or edition, potentially have to look through, and the more the game can potentially get slowed down. But this was a master index across the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, the Tome of Magic, high-level campaigns, Combat and Tactics, Skills and Powers, and Book of Artifacts. So you look up any particular topic in here, and then it tells you, using a different code here in different colors, what page on what book to go and look at. So this became an essential reference because anytime somebody had a question about any type of topic, this is where you went, and then the Game Master often looked at this and then called out what book and what page numbers, and then the players could all pick up a book and go right to that page and see if the information you were looking for was in there. So this was an essential play aid. So for instance, I don't know, morale. If you're looking for something on morale, you look on page 97 and 156 of the Dungeon Master's Guide, and then the box here is Combat and Tactics. So Combat and Tactics, page 17 and 29. Of Creatures, it's found on Combat and Tactics, page 180. Of course, this was before there were electronic compilations like D&D Beyond, so this was the way to compile all of this by in an analog system, and I haven't seen this replicated. I never saw this happen again in any type of physical form for other role-playing games. If it happened, I never saw it. So I thought this was an essential reference, and it came with this Dungeon Master screen. All right, now on to the screen itself. This right here is the screen, and it comes in two pieces, so you can arrange it how you want on the table. They're two trifold pieces like this. Now, they are a portrait, so they're rather tall. Now, today, most Game Master screens are landscape. I prefer the landscape screens myself, but back at the time this was created, I think all of the Game Master screens were created tall like this. So I didn't think anything of it back in the day. That's just how they all were. So this right here, this one, look at this. It's covered with tables, and it's covered with tables not only on the inside, but also on the reverse side. So it's got tables and reference information for both the players and the Game Masters. And that's key to what I think of as really being a fantastic Game Master screen facilitating gameplay. As you can see, the interior isn't particularly artistic. It's very functional, it's bare bones, it's getting you the information and the reference data that you need in order to play your game. And so and it does that on the other side as well. So what kind of information does it have? This is on the Game Master side, and this is the one that was referred to all the time. Encounter reactions, gaze attacks, tracking modifiers, item saving throws. This was a great reference. Like, what kind of saving throw does a bottle of a potion bottle or a vial of oil or something like that have to take? Well, it's right here. Experience points, morale and modifiers, calculated Thaco charts, character saving throws, surprise modifiers, armor class ratings, initiative modifiers, combat modifiers, turning undead, average ability for thieves, cover and concealment, encounter distance, grenade-like missile effects, mounted missile fire, lot quality adjustments, specialist attacks per round, warrior melee attacks per round. That is a lot of information, and it's almost the situation like, is it possible to put all of the tables and reference information that you need to play Advanced Dungeons & Dragons on one single screen? And the answer was yes. Now, of course, a lot of this does look arcane coming from a 5th edition perspective, and also generally the perspective of role-playing games as they've actually improved as far as game design goes since then. So a lot of this from the gameplay perspective has been simplified for the better as far as I'm concerned. But at the time, you had to look up all this information, and here it was for your reference. Now, on the player side, this was looked at all the time. Quick overview of the Outer Planes, but look right here, miscellaneous equipment. No need to go and look up all of the equipment tables. We've got items, their cost and weight right here. There are more eyeballs on the other side of the screen than there are on the Game Master side of the screen. So when the Game Master is scanning one side, all of the players can be looking at the other side. And I remember that happening a lot with this screen. The players, some question would come up and the players would kind of lean over and take a look at the Game Master screen rather than going for a book. And that made things faster. So the equipment was referenced all the time. Gems and base value. Punching and wrestling. This is one of those things that has been simplified in the game and the game rules since this came out. But I remember we had one player who found the punching and wrestling table and just loved to use it. And so now it was a quick reference on the Game Master screen. Calculated Thaco charts. So you notice calculated Thaco charts is here, but it's also here. That's something for combat. That's basically your to hit in combat. If you've never seen Thaco before, that is on the Game Master side and the player side, because that's something that they both need to be able to reference. Armor class ratings, type of armor, AC, cost and weight, shields, armor when you're wrestling, what you can do in one combat round, no time or time required for non-combat activities. How long does it take to open a lock or find or remove traps? It's right here. This right here, the weapon table, item name, weight, size, type, speed factor, damage, all right there for your melee weapons and also your missile weapons. This itself was a freaking amazing reference. Like, this cut down having to go to so many books, saved so much time at the table. Absolutely great reference itself, and that's only half of the screen. The other screen right here, so it's two trifold screens. This one does have a piece of art that is facing the players for a little bit of immersion, but then we've got critical hits, piercing versus humanoids right here. We loved the critical hit tables when we got to combat and tactics, but they were a pain to have to reference and flip through in the books. Well, here is critical hits, piercing versus humanoids, critical hits, slashing versus humanoids, and then here is critical hits, bludgeoning versus humanoids right there. Humanoids are what you fight most often. Piercing, bludgeoning, and slashing weapons, those were your most referenced critical hit charts, and now they're right here in front of you. Here's information on your saving throws by caster level and dice, spell interaction in duels, Thacos. I don't really remember that. I think that might have had to do with psionics. I never really used that. Critical hit, critical events table, and then other, I believe this is information for psionics, combat adjustments, movement and footing. And then on the back, not only do we have, critical hits for slashing versus humanoids, but then also more information for the players. Shield proficiency, battle tactics, specialist attacks per round, psionic attacks versus psionic defenses, knockdowns, actions and initiative penalties, 5 steps of combat. So this was a no-nonsense, facilitate gameplay combat or Game Master screen, and that's really why I liked it. Because to me, this is fulfilling its function as a Dungeons & Dragons play aid. It's getting you the information, it's putting it in front of you, and it's putting it in front of you and the players, which I also don't see replicated very often in modern screens. The players need information too. So that's why I love this screen, and I wish there were something like this for modern role-playing games like 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. And actually, because I never found one like this, I made my own. So we're going to be covering the Game Master screen that I made in another video. But until then, happy gaming, and I look forward to seeing you in another video.